much, and good morning to everyone. Mr. Secretary General, great to see you, and I hope to be able to see you in person, hopefully very soon. And I would like to thank you for inviting me to participate in this important conference. I think that all of us, and especially myself as the Prime Minister, is someone who is, as you have said, in the hot seat during this pandemic, as any other Prime Minister around the world. I will probably benefit the most from learning about different examples and hearing you and your views about how government can face this, what is the right way to respond. And I think that as the Prime Minister of Latvia has said, I think that we are also still, unfortunately, still searching for the best possible response, and we'll probably not know what the best response was perhaps in the, we will learn about this perhaps in a few years when we know more about COVID virus. Right now, with all of the technology that we have, with all of the data that is available, with all of the expert medical help and support, I think still we are changing and adapting our policies to the situation which is changing day in, day out. Different countries trying out different methods to fight the disease, flatten the curve, support its healthcare system. And some are more successful, some are less successful, but I'm, to be honest, very open, very honest, as confused as any of our citizens in what is the best way to respond to this. And also, what I've tried to do and what we've tried to do here in Serbia is try to balance between the adequate response, which will protect the healthcare and the healthcare system and the health of our citizens, and the adequate response, which will also balance this with the needs of the economy. Because at the end of the day, if we do not find a way that the economy functions, at least to a minimum extent, we won't get the budget, we won't get the money into the budget to actually pay for all of the extraordinarily additional costs that this pandemic requires. Buying protective equipment, buying tests, buying ventilators, additional crazy costs that we have for the healthcare in general because of the occupation rate of our beds and the working hours that are now invested by our healthcare workers. Additional costs for the vaccine for seasonal influenza, because again, we had to vaccinate much more people than ever before, and the interest was bigger than any year in the past. Additional money for COVID vaccines, because everyone is asking the governments to pay in advance to basically reserve their place in the queue for the COVID vaccine. We don't know which vaccine will be registered first or which vaccine will be registered at all, but if we are responsible, we will want to wait in all of these lines, and all of that costs money. Now, those extraordinarily budgetary expenses, although I think all of us will, in addition to suffering GDP decline, and Mr. Secretary General has just said that the fall in GDP will be 4.5% on the world level, which is unbelievable, and it will take years to recover. All of us will suffer enormous budgetary deficits because of this extraordinary spending. At the same time, even though we are prepared for these deficits and we kind of mentally came to terms with it, we still have to have some budgetary input so that these deficits are, I would say, moderate, or at least that it will take us 2 to 3 years to recover and come back to some kind of a fiscal stability. So that's why we also needed to balance out with our economy. I think in Serbia, we were overall very, very successful. When I became the Prime Minister in 2017, I put digitization at the top of the list of my priorities. E-government, so fully digitizing the government, to provide as many of electronic services to citizens and businesses as possible. Reforming schools in order to have digital textbooks, digital classrooms, make it more interesting to kids to go to school, but also easier for them to learn, and also try to teach them how to think rather than what to think. Also investing in digitization of our economy and transferring Serbian economy from labor-intensive, investment-driven to innovation-driven and knowledge-based in order to increase the, to make our GDP growth more dynamic. And all of that has paid off during 2020 when we were faced with this kind of pandemic. We did not do these reforms because we knew that the pandemic will come. We did them to make our government more efficient and more transparent, and to make our economy more efficient. Now, I have to say that I'm very pleased that, you know, we never stopped providing services to our citizens, because already by 2020, we could provide many of our services fully electronically, both to citizens and to businesses. I'm very proud to say that we are one of the rare countries in Europe and one of the rare countries in the world that did not lose one single day of schooling in 2020. When the pandemic was very high, we had to stop schools, but we stopped schools physically, kids going to school on Friday afternoon. Monday morning, we were already online. And so, you know, all that we invested in digital education paid off. The economy, thanks to everything that we have done, became much more resilient. We have invested also about 13% of our GDP to support the economy so that the pandemic doesn't kill our small and medium-sized enterprises, small and medium-sized enterprises first and foremost. But by this time, by 2020, because we invested so much in innovation-driven economy, the ICT sector has already reached 6% of our total GDP. And we have seen the ICT sector and the overall services sector in terms of IT, innovation, research and development did not fall faced with the crisis. Everything else fell considerably, especially industrial production, manufacturing, and these kind of things. But still, we were able to protect our economy to the extent that our GDP this year, by the end of this year, will be minus 1%. I'm hoping even 0.7%. So it was good. The unemployment did not increase. To be honest, the unemployment was further reduced because of the support that we provided to young people and the program that we launched, My First Salary, which was also featured as a case study by OECD, and I thank you very much for that. So we were able to fight this quite well during 2020 because we invested so much in digital. Now, the world has changed, the government has changed, public services have changed, and we will have to continue changing. What my worry is, apart from the fact that I know we need to focus more, I fully agree with Secretary General, we have to though also keep our focus on climate change. But what I worry will happen in the world globally, that OECD is probably the best place to discuss, debate and find solutions, is that the gap between rich and poor will be further increased. Because, and what we have seen in Serbia, and I will finish with this, is that labor-intensive investment-driven economies, poor countries will suffer more, because in the labor-intensive economies, you basically weren't able to produce at all during 2020. And as Secretary General has said, the supply chains have changed and will keep changing, because countries will want to move productions closer to home. The richer, more advanced economies and societies, those innovation-based, knowledge-based, innovation-driven, research and development societies, have suffered less and will continue to suffer less. And the gap between rich and poor countries and rich and poor societies might be something that will be very, very difficult to overcome in the future due to this pandemic. Thank you. Well, as I said, I think, you know, the key strength of a government nowadays, regardless of the pandemic, but it was reinforced by the pandemic, is to go digital, to innovate, to try and leave the inherent conservatism of a government bureaucracy, and think of the ways in which we can be of service and available to the citizens and to businesses 24/7, 365 days a year. And if you go fully digital, meaning if you introduce electronic government as much as possible, then you are available all the time to your businesses and to your citizens. One challenge that we have going ahead, which I think is a good challenge, I think it will help all of us work better for our citizens and for our businesses and be more efficient, is the use of artificial intelligence in the government. If you think about the bureaucracy of the government, you then think of, you know, perhaps to be on the conservative side, 30% of the job that civil servants are doing is repetitive job. You know, someone applies for a permit, you can basically tick the box whether they have all of the data, that is all of the information, all of the data, all of the conditions are met to issue that permit. Well, instead of using thousands of civil servants to do this, you can basically use artificial intelligence and automate some of these programs. That would be fantastic. That would also mean not only that these people do some more meaningful work, but that also you can issue permits at 2 o'clock in the morning. 24 hours you can work. Can you imagine what kind of productivity increase and efficiency increase that would mean for governments? It's a completely different government, especially faced with the pandemic such as this one. That means that you have no physical contact with people. I wanted to cut physical contact between government as such, civil servants, and citizens and businesses. Because I think that in the age that we are living in, it's senseless to force people to go down to the municipality, come to the government, go to the police, to bring a paper to finish something. You know, you can do all of that electronically. Plus, if you ask me, that's the best possible way to fight corruption. If you cut all physical contacts and you do all of these things electronically, you basically cut space for corruption, because all of that becomes very, very transparent. And we have seen this, for example, the best example is our construction permitting process. Construction permitting used to be the most difficult, the longest, and most corrupt process in Serbia, because it was that difficult. When we changed the law to make it fully electronic, introduce the systems, we are currently amongst the top 10 countries in the world for the efficiency, the speed of issuing construction permits in the world. You could see it, you could physically see it in the number of infrastructure projects across Serbia, especially obviously private infrastructure projects. So again, all of that helped us provide efficient services to citizens and businesses during the pandemic. So again, this is the key strength. My key takeaway is go digital. If you're a government public service, go digital. And I have to add one more thing in terms of the climate change. I don't have numbers here with me, but we are also, I've asked government office for IT and e-government, which I established as the Prime Minister to be central focus point on this, to make a calculation as of 1st of June 2017, when we started going digital as the government, how much paper we have saved, and then transfer that into the amount of trees that we have saved, amount of water that was made to produce that paper out of those trees, and the electricity. And it's unbelievable. For a small country like Serbia that still did not go fully digital, I'll tell you so it's, as of 1st of June 2017, just by going digital as the government, we have saved 15,000 trees. 15,000 trees means 65 million liters of water and 5,700 megawatts of electricity. Can you imagine if all of us went digital? We would save forests and water. And it's easy, plus you're providing more efficient services. And finally, just a couple of words on my first salary program. When I spoke with the youth organizations in Serbia, they told me something that probably all youth across the world is facing, is that when you apply for a job, everyone asks for work experience. And it's a problem that you cannot resolve. You need a job, but you can't get that first work experience. So as the government, we said, okay, we will invest the money and we will pay part of the salaries, at least 50% of the salary, for companies, for that youth, if they provide the first job to youth. Plus, we made it digital end-to-end, so that all of that is online, and it's very transparent. And we are basically doing the application process, both from the companies and from the youth, online, doing the matchmaking, also utilizing artificial intelligence for the first time. And we'll see. Hopefully, in the next 3 weeks, we'll sign the first contract. I know we're short with time, so I will be very, very brief. One key message. And again, I will be very open and honest, and I will admit that this is something that bothers me very much as the Prime Minister. Again, it's an issue of ever-changing world, and it's a challenge that I don't know how to resolve, or what my attitude towards it should be as the Prime Minister. And that is that that also our perception and the way we understand individual freedoms and civil liberties has changed enormously due to this pandemic, enormously. You know, I was amazed too, and as the Prime Minister of Serbia, I threaded very, very, very carefully on this, because Serbia is also a country which is, I think, known for better or for worse. Sometimes, you know, it's difficult. Sometimes it's very funny. For its, we love conspiracy theories. And, you know, if you live in a society which loves conspiracy theories, then you tread very carefully on civil liberties, because everything that you do can be actually perceived as a part of a bigger conspiracy theory, especially in times like this. But when you look at, for example, you know, some of the European societies, which are promoters of democracy and civil liberties, and you know, the birthplaces of democracies, when you think that these societies now force their citizens to identify and then report to the government their immediate social circle, five people that and then the government allows them to see those 5 people and no one else, and let those 5 people into their homes and no one else, then we are at we live in a very different world of individual freedoms and civil liberties. Not to mention, you know, where does one's personal freedom starts and when does one personal freedom stops? When you have to make wearing masks mandatory, social distancing rules, application to track your movements and contacts, social circles. It's a crazy world where we really tread on a very we need to tread very carefully about what we do to protect civil liberties and individual freedoms, at the same time protecting people's health. So what I'm going to do as the Prime Minister is initiated a larger public debate in Serbia to discuss what people think, people mostly in humanities and social sciences, the institutes, how do they perceive this? What should we do as governments? They should instruct us on how we should behave in those kind of circumstances to protect health, but also protect civil liberties. And again, this is something that I think will emerge as a worldwide problem, even post-pandemic. Thank you very much.